coming out to SoWeBo Fest for having us. My name's Baynard Woods, and in a minute I'm going to read to you from a book I have coming out next month called Inheritance, an autobiography of whiteness. But a couple of years ago I wrote a book with my friend Brandon Soderbergh called I Got a Monster. And that came out of a lot of years of reporting on police in the city, so I can't be here in the summertime in Southwest Baltimore without first talking about Tyree Woodson, who on August 5th, 2014, in the Southwest District Precinct, was shot in the head in the bathroom. BPD has never accounted for it. Their investigation never looked at the evidence. They never accounted for what happened to him. His mother, his brother, the woman he was going to marry. They still grieve as we celebrate today. And so in Memorial Day, thinking about the people who have been killed in that other war, that war here in Baltimore, the drug war, it's led us to give the majority of our budget every year to the police's war against the people. And that's the fast violence we see, but I also want to remind you about what's happening in Poppleton. Sonia Edie, her father, gave her house there in 1992. She's lived there, she's rehabbed it, and the city has decided and that block in Poppleton was full of homeowners when they decided they were going to take the land and give it to a private developer from New York. That was in 2004, and it's been delayed all the way until now. But last year, in the middle of the pandemic, Baltimore City Council and Baltimore City Mayor sent a condemnation notice to the house they had previously given permits for her to rehab just a couple of years earlier. They're using slow violence to take this family from their home. And especially for all of us white people out here in the audience today, this is something that we're causing in all of these cases. This is something that's done in our name in all of these cases. Something we're supposed to benefit from in all of these cases, but we don't. It's bullshit. The drug war takes away the resources from everything that we have. Killing Tyree Woodson takes away from what this city could be. Taking Sonia Edie's home takes away from what this city could be. We see the worst of this in a bit of the way that white people can resist this. My co-author on I Got a Monster, Brandon Soderbergh, and I covered the Charlottesville rally what'll be 5 years ago in August, and we saw the worst of what this looks like, and we also saw a way that white people can resist it in some ways. And so I'm going to read a little bit. This book comes out next month. If you buy it, that would be great, but if not, I'm just grateful to be able to talk to y'all today. The furies of whiteness hit me with full force when the racists rallied in Charlottesville, Virginia, to defend the statues of slaver generals, the same slaver generals my parents had taught me to revere as a child. I arrived in town early that morning with my friend and colleague Brandon. We'd been covering the far right for a couple of years at that point. We were expecting a sad but potentially dangerous little rally of cosplay Confederates, neo-Nazi numbskulls, Facebook fascists, and a smattering of seriously scary militia dudes. But when we saw the torchlit march where dozens of khaki-clad office bros chanted, "Jews will not replace us," the night before, we had begun to expect this march would be different. The moment we arrived at the perimeter around Emancipation Park, where thousands of racists were rallying, we saw a phalanx of white guys in white shirts with black shields and black helmets charge a group of anti-fascist counter-protesters. One of the white guys swung a club that smashed into the face of an anti-fascist woman a few feet from me, landing with a horrible crack, which I could hear amid the grunts and cries and the sounds of wooden shields knocking together. For the next several hours, we were swept up in the sea of violence. A moment of calm would be disrupted by another Nazi group marching in formation toward the statues, attacking counter-protesters on the way. A white man fired a gun toward a black man in the park. Others beat people down with flagpoles and baseball bats. Brandon and I split up, but we checked on each other via text every few minutes or so because the situation seemed so dangerous, even for white guys. It felt as if it could erupt into a mass shooting at any moment. Finally, that afternoon, after hours of skirmishes, the various factions of racists fled. There was a celebration in a nearby park where anti-fascists burned Confederate flags. A rumor swept through the group that a cadre of racists were planning an attack on a mostly black apartment complex nearby. After a quick discussion, this group of mostly white anti-fascists, clad in black, mobilized and began marching in that direction, probably 100 strong. Saying this is the way to be white. The black people in the apartment complexes didn't need the white anti-fascists to come and save them from the white Nazis, but they also shouldn't have to deal with that shit that is our problem. As white people, shit that is a problem of white people's. If there's one thing white people are good at, it's being defensive. If we change the angle of that defense to be white, offers the possibility of putting yourself in the way of white violence, of positioning yourself to shield others from white harm. There were no Nazis in the apartment complex, and the two marches converged with a jubilant cheer. Then a thunderous sound ripped through the marching crowd. I thought it was a bomb. I started running away down a small path beside the road toward a bridge where I thought I could take cover. I couldn't tell if the sound in my ears was my heart pounding against my rib cage or my feet slapping the pavement until I finally stopped and turned to look. It was my heart. I realized that street medics, people at protests who are trained to give emergency aid, were racing to tend to severely wounded people. One medic, a white guy with brown hair, bent frantically over a woman. I saw blood. Two other people ran up with a flag and held it in front of the injured. 2 nights later, as I was falling asleep, I got a text from a source telling me that a truck was about to carry away the monument to Confederate sailors on Mount Royal Avenue. It was 1 a.m. I jumped out of bed and ran 10 blocks to the intersection where the monument sat and got there just in time to see the truck driving away with metal mermaids in its bed. All the Confederate monuments in the city that night were coming down under the cover of night, a phrase usually reserved in Baltimore for discussions of the Colts' move to Indianapolis. Just before dawn, about a dozen of us stood out on a leafy street by the Art Museum as equestrian statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson swung from ropes, casting wild, galloping shadows across the ground in the industrial spotlights used by this removal crew. When I thought of these monuments coming down, I thought of my own name. I'd covered the Baltimore uprising. I'd covered the massacre in Charleston, the rally at Charlottesville, and my name commemorated slavers in South Carolina. The Baynards in the Woods in 1860 claimed ownership to over 700 people. And how could I put that above my stories? I was entirely shaken that day and have been since, as we should all be standing here now. When we look at the Lord Baltimore Theater, when we look at Baltimore Street, this is the product of the racism that we've carried here. It's the product not only of actively choosing to do something, but of looking the other way, of choosing not to see what you don't want to see, of being segregated into the white L and refusing to leave it, and allowing the police to enforce that apartheid. And again, that violence is fast, but it happens with the slow violence of displacement, with this, with the displacement that comes with development. So I'll leave you with some words from Woody Guthrie. It says, it's through this life I've traveled, I met lots of funny men. Some will rob you with a 6-gun, and some with a fountain pen. But it's through this life I've rambled, and it's through this life I've roamed. Never seen an outlaw drive a family from their home. So when we talk about crime in the city, let's talk about all the crime in the city. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Baynard Woods. This is Ink, Ink, Ink.